Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. And we're zooming in and focusing in a little bit more in depth in the second video of the series here. And that is to really understand the covert narcissist and enmeshment. How is this utilized as a manipulation strategy of someone who is covert narcissist, someone who lacks empathy, who has a sort of, pathological sense of self-importance. And with this, then covertly, unbeknownst to the attention or awareness of others, begins to emotionally manipulate others into being a supply source for their needs and keeping them in a enmeshed or trauma bonded state. What that feels like, what that looks like, and how to break free. So before we get started, once again, I want to just give a huge shout out to those of you who have recently donated and supported the channel. Thank you so much for your contributions, your donations, your viewership, your comments and support of each other. It really does make it worth it for me to have viewers like you who really stepped up to the plate and are really applying the resources, the tools, and experiencing the shifts of energy. So thank you so much. And yes, absolutely, if the content has been relevant and we've been a positive tool for you or a positive resource, please do feel free to give back and participate with the channel. There is a PayPal Donate Now button here at the homepage of Peace and Harmony, and we would absolutely love that. So thank you so much. And so we're going to zoom in and focus in a little bit more in depth in understanding enmeshment, how it occurs, why it occurs, what it feels like, what it looks like, and then how to break free. So enmeshment with the supply, let's just kind of get on the same page with some of terminology. It is to understand that a covert narcissist is someone who is plagued or identified by having sort of a pathological sense of self-importance, coupled with a lack of empathy or an empathy deficit. In other words, really everything is one directional. Everything is really truly about them. That is on the forefront of their operatus moderandi. That is how they navigate and prioritize their life, as well as their relationships, how they treat others, whether it's, especially those others who they, deem minors or superior or supply, are generally those others who they're going to provoke or manipulate into a less than or lower than status. In other words, especially through a number of different ways of relating to others, that they sort of withhold the goods, they withhold the juice, they withhold the DNA, their communication, their body language, in terms of lack of interaction, emotionally, energetically. They are very sort of under lock and key. You don't hear a lot from them. You don't see a lot, in terms of their outward support of you or their direction, yet they will sort of deny this. In other words, it's just like basically saying, well, the dresser fell on you, let's see how you deal with it, sort of experience. In other words, they put people into a bind, physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, where they're sort of underneath the dresser, so to speak. And, as if you can, from that state, even though you're hurting, as long as you say a couple things, they'll lighten the load just a little bit, but you're always sort of feeling clamped down or underneath the weight of their manipulation in an experience of enmeshment. In other words, you're always sort of feeling their needs. You're energetically feeling that they need you around, or they need to have you, or your self drive is infused with their needs. In other words, you can't really sort of feel like you can break free, pursue your life purpose, experience your own strengths, and live defined by the positive. You're always sort of feeling you are defined by the negative. And the narcissist will inextricably, unequivocally relate to others sort of in this always tinge or taint of the negative. In other words, that's how they get you to a meeker than or weaker than or disempowered position, is through oftentimes their nonverbal or even their verbal statements. And in other words, it's what they withhold, what they're not communicating, what they're not giving you, what they're not showing you. They're not showing you the love. they're not communicating it. It's just there's a lack thereof. So it's not necessarily, what they're doing, but it's what they're not doing. And this creates an enmeshment or a trauma bond, meaning if you're very much stuck on a survival mode in a fear-based mode of reality. Everything is sort of on pins and needles. Everything is on eggshells. Your foundation is not solid. The goal is to help you eliminate that feeling totally, that eggshell feeling, that pins and needles feeling, that feeling of the dresser is on me, can you please help me get it off of me? That's the burden, that's the resentment, that's the anger. It feels oftentimes very heavy. People become, post-traumatic stress syndrome. They are, feeling fearful to leave their house. They are just so unsure. They're always on the paranoia that something, the next pin is going to drop, the hammer's going to drop, the hammer of judgment. They've been around so much rage, explosiveness, that it's always still sort of replaying in their body. It's replaying in their mind. It's replaying in their spirit. And so we need to break that broken record. It's nothing but a broken record that's playing, and it's time to say, you know what, that tune ain't jiving so well. That tune I'm not dancing to that right now. In fact, I'm, hobbling around, and I need a cane or crutches or a walker emotionally because it is so burdensome and it's so uncomfortable. That is what the emotional pain is like when you're in enmeshment, when there's this interlacing of this other person's with your own. In other words, you become extremely self-conscious. When someone is enmeshed, the social anxiety, I feel, is also times very much based in a self-consciousness. They're looking at me one way, they're looking at me another way. There's this paranoia. I just feel like something is off. My fingernails aren't right, my toenails, maybe my feet are dry. I might stumble. I might look stupid. My head knot might be right. My shoulders, wherever it is kind of stored in your body, those people who have the social anxiety and the enmeshment issue are extremely self-conscious. In other words, they're always feeling fearful. There's something uncomfortable. They can't move through gracefully. When they talk about, divine grace, the flow, living in the flow, this oftentimes is not experienced when you're in enmeshed awareness. So it is an internal relationship. When we talk about a relationship with a covert narcissist, oftentimes the relationship is in your head. It's in the internal wiring. It's in it's in how you've evaluated them and yourself. It's in sort of how your own self-assessment. It becomes then a negative self-assessment or negative devaluing because you've gone through the cycle. And you don't want to be discarded, you don't want to be abandoned, so one then lives in the enmeshed state to keep their needs because you're then defined about how well you keep them happy. And so this is flawed thinking. This is erroneous thinking to feel that your self-determination, your value is based on and pivoted around this thought pattern. I'm calling that negative orderly direction thinking. Nod thinking, like, that ain't right, that ain't flying, that is, we got to scratch the record on that. We got to take the needle, scratch over it so the record doesn't continue to play. In fact, that's a very effective visualization when it comes to getting those ruminations out. It's to understand that those negative feelings are nothing what we call ruminations or sort of flashback moments that are replaying in what you've repeated and memorized within yourself physiologically. So realize that, it's not like your mind is over here and your body's over there. I mean, you're all, you're a human being. This is all together. Okay, and so it's to understand that enmeshment oftentimes means that you're defining yourself by how well you satisfy that other person's needs. And you're not hearing your own needs. So number one, we need to become more sensitive to our needs. So it is to become less self-conscious, number one, in becoming more sensitive to your own needs. So it is very important that you become you lose the self-consciousness. You're not worried in a worried or fearful state because fearful, if you really look at what the fear is based on right now, you could even write right now, if you want to get out a pad of paper, what I'm most fearful about right now is list 1 through 10. And if you get those out, and you write them out, and so in other words, just spontaneously without a censorship, you'll be able to see exactly what those are. Those are bubbling underneath the surface. So that's where we need to do the work. We need to extract it. We need to, get it out of that, think of yourself like a pond that's been contaminated. We want to get that out. We want to filter that out. We want to, like a record that's playing, we want to take the needle and just scratch it. We want to take a big sharp knife and scratch over those grooves and throw away the record to get those out of the system and stop from playing. So we want to get a filter and defilter out all the gunk, all the negativity. And oftentimes if you look at what is so fearful, and that's unique for each person, so I'm afraid I can't do it alone. I'm afraid I'm not lovable. I'm afraid my skin's the wrong color. I'm afraid my hair's the wrong color. I'm afraid my feet don't look good. I mean, whatever, these fears are, these are what are holding you back and are what we call your self-limiting beliefs. And these can be changed. So we need to look at these and put a big X through these and, cross these out, because this is fear. If it's fear-based, it's false evidence appearing real. So it's really what your mind is then projecting, because based on the enmeshment, these oftentimes have been infused into what we call self-limiting beliefs and what's holding you back. It's keeping you in a less than or disempowered, unhappy, and oftentimes self-conscious, I can't make a decision state. So for example, when you watch, the ballet, or, you watch, a show, or for example, like right now, I am not self-conscious. I'm giving this to you from my heart. I'm not worried. I'm not in a fear-based state. I'm comfortable. I'm completely at peace. I'm in a relaxed body. I know what I can change and what I can't change. I understand the past and I've left it there. I've let it go in love and compassion and understanding that this person, whoever was enmeshed, that is who they are. And a viewer had so aptly stated, why did God create these? Well, it is created, so let's just let that go. It is created, so let's let that go. This is part of life. So it's just as much part of life as, you might see a feather. So, and a feather can be used to tickle you, and a feather can be a beautiful, element to flight. So why don't we focus and lose the self-consciousness that oftentimes has been placed by the judgment of this person? Why don't we eliminate that? And why don't we do some things to get that out of the system and purge them and resensitize and rehumanize and give affection to yourself the way that you need it now? It is to lose self-consciousness. It's to stop the worry state. It's to stop the internal dialogue, I am not, I will never. It is to stop those negative feelings. You don't need to live by that negativity. If you're organized around the negativity, that's what they call negative validation. It's like the anorexics, the bulimics. I mean, they, are throwing up food. They're not giving themselves the nutrition. They are acting in that negative validation state. And it's just like the same thing. It's, if you're enmeshed, part of those negative feelings, another person's needs are overpowering or overwhelming your life. They're causing the anxiety. And oftentimes it's because you can't live someone else's life for them. If you're trying to do that, if you're enmeshed, if you're trying to be, an echoist to a covert narcissist, in other words, live by the echo of their needs, you're eventually going to become depleted, disempowered, self-conscious. You're going to feel dehumanized and feel that you're not good enough. You can't do this, and you can't mobilize in life. So, you need to break free of that is to say, I understand the why. I understand how my own needs were shunned. I understand how my needs weren't brought to life. I understand how the inner me was not allowed. So it's just like, it's an understanding, it's a conscious understanding of like what took place historically and the why, and then understanding that this person just is, and to let them go. And it is to understand that they, let them go in love and light. They are human. Humans aren't perfect. This is a good example. No one is perfect, but this is an example, and you don't have to bash them. You don't have to become their nightmare. You don't have to become their disappointment, because if you take that approach, I feel, then you're setting yourself up for a combativeness where you're always living in a reactive state to this person. Why would you want to do this to yourself? Why would you want to stay enmeshed, entangled, and operating out of a trauma bond? That is a choice. And to me, that would be a poor choice, because then you're still connected to the negative, you're still connected to the problem. And why would you want to do that? That's to set yourself up for unhappiness, failure, struggle, disease, self-neglect. And so, that is erroneous or flawed thinking. So it's to understand the why this created this enmeshment, and to understand your role in it. And in the privacy of this video, it is to say, I understand and I admit to myself how I had unconsciously agreed basically to this contract of feeling less than, or less worthy than, or less important, or less beautiful, or less intelligent, or etc. And to not be driven by the positive and your own talente, your own talent, your own purpose. It's not to be allowed to experience that. And so it is to understand that your I am is to be organized around the I am. So your identity is I am. And I am divine. It is to understand that you are part of the divinity. I mean, you are part of what the sun, the cosmos, the divine orchestrated intelligence, who's created the sacred geometry, who's created the orbits. I mean, all that, you are part of that. And so that is like pretty amazing. Like when you get into that, awesome, everybody throws around the word awesome nowadays, but you truly are part of that. And so you need to acknowledge and validate that and get into that as part of your centered state. In other words, and then carrying this awareness that this awesome, and having a sense of the miraculous within your own self, and then really sort of looking at what you can do to energize and then open up that awareness. Open up that understanding that you are centered and connected to a higher solution, which then can guide and organize and give you and satisfy and validate your needs that this individual or this flawed thinking cannot. And I call that positive, orderly direction thinking. Pod thinking. In other words, that you're like within a pod within yourself. You have, you have, all your senses. You've now, you're living by your senses. You've empowered your senses and live. And we're going to do another video on how to resensitize yourself through all your senses, including, your seventh and eighth senses, your intuition and your higher awareness. So in other words, it's to open up that higher energy, those bigger channels that elevate you in life, help you to feel like you're becoming more of a person, you're self-improving, you're living by the law of attraction. You're using that universal law that we hear so much about, but it's the ability to then attract and then bring into your feel state, your awareness state, your be state. Once you kind of, you get your I am in your internal dialogue, you are not living by enmeshment. You're not living by the I'm trying to state. I'm trying to become professional. I am professional. I'm trying to love. I am love. I'm trying to work. I am work. I am working. And instead of I'm trying to be healthy, I am healthy. And then you're creating a shortcut. We hear about apps and everything. This is like the emotional app within you. It's when you then become in a B state and you're living in the B state of the positive, and then you're extracted completely. You're no longer attached physically to the experience that have set up the feelings in motion. So all the negative enmeshment that has created the feelings and experiences and choices and decades of time, all that which has created those feelings are no longer, you're no longer connected through the body and mind and spirit to those experiences. So you're completely separate. And I'm not talking about like detaching from reality. I'm talking about getting into an awareness. So it's seeing that I'm no longer the body-mind connection to that past experience. So body-mind which means coming into the present, which is saying, okay, it is a gift, which is a miracle, and acknowledging of that I am able to stop that rapidity and decline of feelings. I'm able to stop that. I have the power, and I have the ability to change my thought process and attract it into the positive. So I'm now allowing it to come within. I'm now allowing to receive. So and I'm no longer in a reactive state. I'm in a receptive state. And I'm in an I am state. And I'm energized, and I'm now rehumanizing and resensitizing myself to live and be and make decisions, choices, and become that which is fused with my prefrontal cortex, sort of that visionary state. So you're becoming like a new visionary for your life. And it's in a higher consciousness, and it's like, whoa, that's pretty awesome. Well, we're here to live the awesome. We are all about the results here, and we're all about, coming into that B state. It sounds very basic, very fundamental, very rudimentary, but you really do need to get into it like an exercise. Just like you would work your muscle, you need to work your awareness. And so the awareness of detaching from the enmeshment is to say, and to visualize and see that you are no longer the body-mind experience that is attached to that. So in other words, there's a boundary there. There's it's not even like there's no sort of toxicity or tainting of that. So it's to detach from that completely and come into kind of a very meditative state. So we talk about a lot of people always sit with their arms, they're chewing down their nails, they're always twirling their hair, they're always so nervous. It's to say, it's to admit that nervousness, that hyperactivity is no longer serving me. That chaos is no longer serving me. That struggle and the fighting is no longer serving me. Doing what is not best for me is no longer serving me. I am no longer, my physical body is no longer that individual. I am not that. And it's to say, it is to deny, not to live in denial, but it is to acknowledge and validate in the positive that I am free. I'm no longer that wounded or that whipping post or the receptacle for that garbage. I'm not the garbage receptacle.